everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Words Margins Bookselling, Bookselling as Culture Work, a Celebration, featuring our 2023 BIPOC Bookseller Award winners. My name is Michelle, and I'm your host for today's event. If you are new to our programs here, The Word is a nonprofit organization whose mission is storytelling for collective abundance. We center authentic storytelling for BIPOC, LGBTQIA2S+, neurodiverse and disabled communities, support and connect writers, publishers, booksellers, and readers, explore and build collective models for the literary ecosystem, and hold safe space in community. Our main programs include the Editor-Writer Mentorship. Applications are open now. Our Margins Literary Conference and Book Festival, which is taking place online September 9th through the 14th, and in person in Denver, September 21st and 22nd. And our Margins Bookselling program, including the BIPOC Bookseller Award. Nominations for 2024 are also open now. A lot of things happening over here at The Word. We always have new events and programming to share, so we hope you'll check us out at thewordfordiversity.org to stay up to date and connected. Tonight's event is a part of our Margins Bookselling program, which celebrates booksellers and bookstores centering the communities the Word serves. Our celebrations include the Duende Word BIPOC Bookseller Award, the month-long celebration in July, this month, amplifying bookstores in our network to help build reader discovery, an interactive bookstore map featuring nearly 200 bookstores owned and or managed by the communities we serve, curated author events, bookseller curated reading lists and recommendations, community-centered workshops and education sessions, and opportunities for economic and professional development. So thank you for taking part in this program. Now for our special guests of honor this evening, I'm so happy to introduce our 2023 BIPOC Bookseller Award winners, starting with Tso Haidas, winner of the Activism Award. Erica is the founder of Belonging Books, a community program provider and pop-up bookstore that centers the voices and stories of people of color and our other underrepresented people. She creates and holds space on Cape Cod for those communities to gather in joy, celebration, safety, and rest. Erica is also a founding member of the Arts and Justice Collective, a collaboration of mission-driven organizations that creates a culture of belonging for members of historically excluded communities through art and social justice. She furthers her racial justice work by practicing pro bono immigration law and volunteering with local racial equity nonprofits and committees. Also joining us is Joanna Belfer, winner of the Innovation Award. Joanna is the founder and owner of Belcanto Books, an independent bookstore with 3 locations in Long Beach, California. A Filipino-American poet and former hospitality executive, Belfer began hosting pop-up book events in 2018 as a way of connecting her business experience with her lifelong love of reading. She currently serves on the board of directors of the California Independent Booksellers Alliance and is a founding member of the Burning Issues Book Club and the Indie Bookstore Field Trips Group. Last but not least, Egypt Otis, winner of the Leadership Award. Egypt is the owner of Kama Bookstore and Social Hub, a dedicated culture worker, community organizer, and devoted mom. Her life's mission centers around using social justice, BIPOC literature, and culture as powerful tools to mobilize communities into the arts and disrupt systems that marginalize them. At the helm of Kama Bookstore and Social Hub, Egypt has created a safe haven that fosters inclusivity, representation, and creativity. Her bookstore has become a vibrant cultural hub, nurturing emerging talents and connecting diverse voices through literature, art, and activism. As an unwavering advocate for social justice, Egypt has fearlessly championed causes that challenge systemic inequities. She believes in harnessing the power of storytelling and literature to reshape perspectives and drive transformative change. Also joining us is going to be, briefly, Angela Maria Spring, who co-created this award with us, the Duende. That's why it's called the Duende Word BIPOC Bookseller Award. Angela is a poet, journalist, and the owner of Duende District, a bookstore sin fronteras for and by people of color where all are welcomed. She holds an MFA from Sarah Lawrence College, and you can find their recent work in The Slowdown, A Public Space, The Washington Review of Books, Catapult, Lit Hub, and Tor.com. Her poetry collection, Desmadre Poems, is forthcoming from Flower Song Press. Moderating this event tonight is Heather Halak, a Cuban American from Miami who runs Third House Books, an independent bookstore in Gainesville, Florida, which was operating for 7 years. Before bookselling, she worked in the music industry at a major record label while attending the University of Florida and later in New York City. She also runs social media at a small Florida press, Borough Press. She has more Scorpio placements than Bjork. Maybe my favorite line of a bio. Please, I'm so happy to have everyone join us on the stage. Over to you, y'all.
Hi, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I have been so inspired by your work at The Word, and it is an honor to be here tonight. With running a bookstore for 7, 8 years now, I know that there's a lot of heart that goes into the daily toil, whether it is unpacking books that have arrived at your door, and putting everything in inventory, dealing with a young customer, an old customer, a regular, familiar face, unfamiliar face, planning events. But I think that's something that people don't often get from us is the moment, the spark where we knew we had to do what we've been doing for years now. I know the three of you have done all three of you do so many things. Your bios were so impressive. I was reading them and I was like, I don't know how many questions to ask or what to ask about. So I will start with a very simple one. And I'll start with you, Erica. I'll try and go in the order that Michelle started us with. But what was the impetus? What was that spark moment where you knew you had to start Belonging Books?
Thank you, Heather, and thank you to the Word and Duende for this honor and recognition. I will say I feel sometimes I feel undeserving of something like this, but
Absolutely not.
but I'll jump in and let you know. I think for me, so I am first generation Chinese Canadian, grew up in Vancouver, really diverse place. Lived in lots of very diverse cities, New York, Montreal, Toronto, and found myself on Cape Cod. And I don't know, who knows much about Cape Cod, but it, from an ethnic perspective, at least, it's not a very, very diverse place at all. So when we moved here, my husband's from here, my partner's from here, and when we moved here from straight out of New York with a new baby, you know, very isolated. Took me, I think, honestly, until I started Belonging Books to really find my groove and find my community in a lot of ways. And without going into any really specific details, my story is essentially sparked from it involved a book. It involved a book about systemic racism, and it involved a very angry person encountering that book. So there was this moment of like, this is where I'm going to be. This is where my children are going to be raised. How do we make this our home? How do we make this a place that feels like our community? Because it didn't feel like that for me. It felt like I needed to run away as far away as possible. And I think, I don't know, I had this moment, literally got up, got my journal, started scribbling. I was reading a ton. I always have been a reader. I love books. And I decided that that was how I could kind of symbolically center and amplify, underrepresented voices and BIPOC voices, and in particular BIPOC voices. And I think that sort of was the spark. Books made sense to me as the platform, and the heart of my mission is creating those spaces that are for rest and connection, particularly these BIPOC-centered spaces in a place that is white-centered.
Thank you for that. I have a very similar story for my bookstore. It was founded by my former business partner following the election in 2016. And I later got involved because I didn't want to be home during my big breakup. So lots of fractured things happening in my life. And I felt like I found community hanging out at a bookstore and seeing people connect, and people who wouldn't meet otherwise or had conversations they wouldn't have in any other spaces. I felt like even the things we had on our shelves encouraged people to talk about things more. So thank you for saying that. Joanna, do you want to tell us a little bit about your bookstore and how you started that? What was your spark moment?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
It's great to be in company with Erica and Egypt, and also with Angela, whose bookstore I've like admired for a really long time. So this is super exciting. I started, I think, very similar to Heather and Erica, and I'm sure Egypt, like we're all, I think, responding to, you know, these moments in our lives that are pushing us to do something. I had worked in the hospitality industry for a number of years and had risen, you know, as far as I thought I was going to go. And I'm sure, like most people who work in corporate America, there's just so much bureaucracy, so much politicking that you have to do in order to, you know, do the work that is meaningful to you. And same with me. I was, you know, during the 2016 election and really casting about for what it all means. What was my legacy going to be? What did I want to pass on to my community? And I really thought, okay, being a hotel professional is not it.
Yeah.
This is not what I want on my tombstone. And I started thinking about, you know, bookstores. I'd never been a small business owner. I've always worked for somebody else. So that was something that was really scary to me. But I just approached it like I've approached a lot of other things in my life, in terms of doing lots of research, reaching out to people. I met Mark and, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on her name, but with Paz and Associates, and went to one of their bookstore book camps, which amazingly was going to be visiting Belcanto, or the Parnassus Books, which was founded or co-founded by Ann Patchett, one of my favorite authors, and for whom we take our name. Her book Belcanto, which has been really important to me, and I just was so inspired. I thought that there would be, you know, 10 people in my bookstore cohort, and there were 20 of us, and some people were already like much further along. And instead of being scared, although I was definitely scared to learn how many different things go into starting your own business, I was incredibly energized and inspired and felt empowered by that group. And some of them I'm still friends with and still cheerlead on from, you know, different parts of the country. And I think, like Erica, was looking for a sense of a deeper tie to our community, and being able to really say, like, I'm part of Long Beach. I don't just live here. I don't just, you know, have my house here. Like, I'm part of the community. And, you know, six or 7 years down the road now, it's amazing to be able to, you know, run into regular people who I know now through the bookstore at our spaces, to be walking down the street and be able to be like, hey, how's it going? How's that book going? And have people stop me and just say how meaningful it's been to find these books on our shelves. Because I know, like many of us, these books were not around when we were kids. You know, I was reading all of, you know, like E.B. White, and was like deep into Sherlock Holmes and Arthurian legends, and didn't have books that were written by Filipinos about, you know, Filipino legends. I'm like, what? So it's just a really exciting time to be doing this, and just really thrilled to continue to do this work.
Thank you for all of that. I really resonated with not seeing books in a bookstore or library of people who look like you on the cover or in the author photo. That's something I've really tried to combat in my bookstore, and it doesn't have to be for everybody, but I think it's for us. And I think there's something to being the person you needed like, or for much younger you.
Yep.
And being able to set that example, and for the next generation to not have to have these insecurities and things that they carry. And it's just like, you know, there are diverse books, and I hope that there are one day more diverse books than like cishet white books, you know, and that there can't be BIPOC sections because the whole section is so BIPOC or so queer. And thank you for saying that. I really resonate with that. I know we have Angela for a few more minutes. Egypt, would you mind if I have Angela speak a little bit about Duende before?
It's so kind. I can't, just being in this room with all of you is amazing. Like, I have admired you all from afar and from near. I mean, I feel like we've been in this since the beginning. Heather, I have been a huge admirer. Your social media presence, I love that you fucking do not care, and you will tweet it, you will like, and I'm like, yes, that's what we need. You know, in Egypt, you're like out there you're doing like what your community needs you so much. And I know it's a struggle. I know it's a battle every day. Like every single one of you, I know what a battle it is. And the reason why, you know, I got together with the Word and I wanted to do this award was the entire reason why I started Duende in the first place. You know, a lot of people know my origin story. You know, I was a manager at Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. And there was a lot that went into my spark. But ultimately, it was that I had this unbelievably talented staff. And so many of them were Black and brown. And the owners would never let them rise. And they would only let me rise so far. And like, you know, like white privilege personified, but they still couldn't get beyond that. And I didn't feel like I could like, I felt like I hit the wall for what I could do to make sure that they got everything they deserved, because they worked their asses off and they were smart as hell. You know, they were the most amazing booksellers. And, you know, I think about like one of the Christopher Greggs, who has done all of the Duende branding and is just brilliant. He's a poet. He works at Cave Canem. He's also a musician, a rapper. Like, he was on my team, and there was so much that he could have done. And I saw them just look him over because he was Black. And I was like, fuck this. Like, I'd been a bookseller for like almost 15 years at that point. And I was like, why am I crying with a customer because we're like both Latina and there's no books by Latinx people in the fucking US culture section? Like,
Real.
What the hell? You know, like, and she's just staring at me like, we have money too. And I was just like, yeah, nobody cares. The buyer's white. Like, I can't, you know. And I was just like, but it was like because of booksellers like you. I was like, what can I do? What can I do? You know, I'll start my own thing. It'll be weird because I'm weird. And it just sort of evolved as it went. But it really was all about like, I was like, how can I help? You know, I wasn't able, obviously, like Christopher wasn't able, like at first I wasn't able to give him a lot of money, or Josh, who is also really wonderful, who's been like done all of our web stuff and is also an amazing person. I was like, but I could help give them some platform, you know, and we could work together and you know, seeing how far they've come and being able to do what they can. Anytime I got, like for me, I feel like you guys, you know, when the pandemic started and I got like a couple grants and things like that, but I was like, I'm in a privileged position where like my husband makes enough money to keep us going. But I was like, that money needs to be funneled. I remember talking to this with Lee Francis, who I did a pop-up with Red Planet when they were still going. It's like, that money needs to be funneled to our communities. Whatever money there is, you know, like, for example, you know, you guys know I have the bookshop Decolonize Your Mind list. And of course, when the George Floyd happened, like all of these different, so I suddenly started getting like, not a lot, like I'm a very small, like, but I got like a lot of money coming in. And I was like, what the hell? And so I was like, I called in Christopher, I called in Stephanie Steele, who's amazing, and it was my children's buyer. And I was like, money is going to the Black community. Like, you can't, like, just a bunch of white people buying these books. I was like, at the very least, like, so 90% of anything that came in and 90% of the grant stuff that I got went to like my people, you know, as much as I could. And even this award, I remember I was talking to my friend Noelle Santos. Do you guys know Noelle? She owns Lip Bar. She was out. We were gonna do $500 because I was like, I want it to be a monetary award. I don't know how. Like, I feel like we are like at the bottom. Like, booksellers already don't make anything, and then we're like at the bottom there, right?
Yep.
And I was like, and she was like, nah, man, it should be 1,000. You know, and I was like, all right. So like, you know, I went to the word and we worked it out, you know, because I was like, yeah, it should be 1,000. It should be more. Y'all deserve so much more, you know, but everything about Duende and everything that I've done has been about you guys. And because you are the ones who are doing the amazing things, and whatever I can do to help, basically. That's what Duende is about. That's all I really care about doing. That's my dream, is I just want you all to succeed as much as possible, especially in a system that it makes it impossible for us to succeed. So that's it.
Well, I think community is about giving all of that right back to each other. And I would not sell myself short. You are incredible. And the work that you do at Duende is very important. Your involvement in this award is important. This existing is important. I don't remember anything like this existing when I first started bookselling. There were much less diversity-based groups when I was bookselling in the very beginning. I felt like I was almost drowning in an oversaturation of anything that didn't represent me or anyone who was like from a different community. I just felt like it was a lot of cishet whiteness, and especially in Florida and the South, it's terrifying. So support from stores like yours and from people like you is tremendously valuable, and something that, like, I think on really hard days, we'll think about comments like this, and it's like what gets you through when you're sitting behind the counter and having a meltdown, you know? So thank you for everything that you do. And please give yourself a pat on the back and like all the air hugs from me at least, because seriously, you do so much and you have to own it, please.
I love you guys. You mean like this is what gives it all meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being in community with each other, supporting each other. So thank you. And I'm really sorry I can't stay for the whole thing. I'm going to keep it on so I can listen to you guys, because of course you're going to say amazing, brilliant things. And I'm my little one, and he's like, we got to do the dinner thing. It'll get messy if we don't. So again, congratulations to the winners. Like, you know, this is going to keep circling back. My love to the word. Always, especially for keeping this award going. Heather, thank you so much for moderating this. I'm so happy that we finally got to
I know.
You're
real.
So have an amazing conversation. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I love you too. I love what she was saying about the symbiosis of community, and I feel like that really speaks to what we've all been talking about tonight. And I think this is a perfect moment for you to talk about all of your work, Egypt, because your bio is so impressive. What do you not do for community, I think, is an easier question. But if you would do us all the honor of telling us a little bit about why you started Comma Bookstore, and what was your spark moment? Where did this begin? What was the inception?
Well, first, wow, just listening to everyone's story, and I'm seeing a general theme, a call and response. I believe this is purpose-driven work. We're really called to do it. You don't necessarily plan to, because God knows I did not. And it's such a loaded question. I've been thinking, how am I going to package this up so I don't take up all of the time? So I would say, first, I'll have to go back to my organizing days. So before beginning the journey of being a bookseller and a culture worker, I was a community organizer. And before then, I was working in the social work field and just kind of working in different jobs, hospitality, just bouncing around. And books was not something that I took solace in. I didn't really fall in love with reading until I became much older. And I think that's really where my story first started. I met this magnificent woman who was a former Black Panther Party member, and she was just so fabulous. And I connected with her because we kind of had similar upbringings, and she gave me representation and she gave me a book. She introduced me to Assata Shakur, to Elaine Brown,
Love
and those
that.
were the first few books that I picked up, and I started to learn more about my culture. I felt more connected to my Blackness, and I started to embrace it. And the wonderful thing about books was that I was able to reclaim and reshape my own narrative. I was a high school dropout, and I was actually expelled from high school. And kind of from that moment, I felt a sense of despair, to be honest with you. So with books, it gave me so much power. And I was able to recognize systems around me through reading about books written by Assata Shakur, written by Elaine Brown, who also experienced similar things as well. And it gave me so much, so many tools to navigate through life. I think there is this quote that I often use from Marcus Garvey, saying that a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree with no roots. So from me reading more books, then I started to explore different independent bookstores, not necessarily in my community. I'm from Flint, Michigan, by the way. I don't think I put that in my bio. Maybe that's something I need to change. But I would often go to other cities, like Ann Arbor, like Detroit, and I just noticed this absence of representation in my hometown, which is kind of crazy considering Flint is a majority Black community. And from that, I was working, as I said, fast forward, a community organizer. I wanted to combine my work in social justice and books into something more meaningful and purposeful, because even when you're working in helping industries, there's still bureaucracy and there's another mission that you have to work under, and oftentimes Black people are still left out of those missions. And I got really tired of it, to be honest with you. Then 2020 happened, COVID happened, all this political unrest was happening as well. And I was working as a civil rights campaign director and lost my job. And I mean, much of the world did too. But I was able to really reflect on what my purpose was going to be, kind of what was mentioned, what my legacy is, what am I going to leave behind to my daughter. And I wanted to really make a mark in my community. And I opened Comma Bookstore. We are the only Black bookseller in Flint and Genesee County. And it is an immense responsibility. And I'm really grateful for spaces like this, so that we can come together as our own community and talk about and celebrate our accomplishments, but also be transparent in that we're still working in this system of capitalism and racism, sexism, all the isms. So it's really nice to be able to exchange our experiences with each other, lift each other up when sometimes just it seems like the world is like going against you when you're trying to make a strong impact. So that's a little bit about how I got started. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that is a story a lot of people can relate to. And I think about, I've loved books since I was a kid. I actually learned how to read so that I wouldn't have to interact with my little brother. I know. But when I hear about people who are like, I wasn't a reader, and then I picked up this one book, I haven't heard Assata Shakur's biography for that answer or for that question, and I am so glad that you said that, because I love her, and that is an incredible book, a credible autobiography, and it speaks to also a lack of people who look like us in our education system and in our libraries, people who don't understand the cultural needs of the kids in the classroom. And I was a library kid, and I lived in a library. I checked out so many books every summer. I always won the summer reading contest. And but I think that's because I had librarians who saw me. And so I think you're doing the work of seeing people and putting books in their hands that reaffirm that, because you didn't have that. And so I'm so glad that you did meet this woman who introduced you to these books, because as a lifelong reader, that is something I always want to hear. And everyone has, I think, a book that changes their life. But that's such an exceptional example. So something I did want to talk about we're talking about culture and how culture has affected the way that we've operated our bookstores, why we opened, how we exist as people. And, for me, being a Latina in the South, especially in Florida with everything going on, this is something I think about a lot. I just wanted to float this question, and we can always, if this is too stressful, we can move on to something else. How do you see your role as a bookseller with the upcoming election and with everything happening this year? And also then how are you taking care of yourself? Because I'm terrible at doing that for myself. But I could definitely use pointers. I think we all could. But yeah, where do you see yourself in this position right now? Because it's really hard. For me, there's so many book bans. There's parents coming in who are like, you shouldn't be selling this book. Wow. And I no longer have a brick and mortar. I converted to pop-ups and events only because I was actually hate crimed. And it's just something I don't want to deal with anymore after almost 10 years. So how do you deal with all of this? Where do you see yourself?
I'd like, Heather, you go right in.
I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, I think this is something that we're all wrestling with. Whether you're a bookseller or you're a parent or you're, whatever you do. I think this is something that we're all going to be wrestling with now. It's really friggin' hard. And I think to me, it's always the balance between what I want to do and can do versus, like you said, keeping yourself safe and being smart about what you choose to do. I think for me, it's just paying really special attention to our community and making sure that we are keeping them in mind in terms of, things as small. I mean, it's not small to me, but book curation. I feel really lucky in that, we live in our stores in this pocket of Long Beach that is incredibly diverse and both, racially and ethnically and socioeconomically. And so, it's heartbreaking to me to hear about bookstores, like yours and even from, people not that far from our store who are physically being assaulted, physically being attacked in their stores for books. It's just mind-boggling to me. But I know that that's out there. Mm-hmm. And so to me, the most important thing I can do is just to put books on the shelf and make sure that they're available to people to see. And I don't have to proselytize and say, you have to believe this or that or the other thing. I'm just going to put the books out there. They're really good books. I think they're really interesting. And I think they're going to, make you think about different things that you might not normally think about. And I feel like for me, that's always been the way that I've come to a new subject or a new experience or learning about a new place or a new culture. Because, I was just talking with a friend of mine, there is something so different about reading a book than almost any other kind of art or cultural experience, because at the end of the day, it's between you and those words. And so I just, in some ways, kind of want to get out of the way. Mm-hmm. And let people experience that for themselves. But at the same time, I'm very thoughtful in terms of making sure that I'm curating books that are speaking to the current moment, that are, that we have Palestinian authors on our shelves, that we have other perspectives, and so to me, that's how in just the small ways that I'm thinking about it. And I think the other way is how can we get more involved in terms of voter registration, letter writing campaigns, what else can we be doing that is a more active and direct way to get involved, while still I'm an introvert and kind of a chicken, so I still have to be
nervous all day about this.
Exactly. So you have to I tell everyone you got to do what works for you, and I think that's super important. And then just in terms of self-care, I'm whatever you like to do it. You know, give yourself 30 minutes, an hour, a whole day if you can. Like, have the ice cream, read a great book, watch some TV, go see your, you know, talk to your best friend for 20 minutes, like whatever it is that is going to rejuvenate you, do it, because, you know, nobody's out there like trying to make sure we're okay. So we have to make sure that we're okay.
Yes, thank you so much for that. There's a few things, there's so many things I could talk about with what you just said. This makes me think of, I had a puberty-related nonfiction book for teens in my YA section, and I had two people come in and look through it, and I think it had some like anatomical illustrations, and both people, I was surprised, it was like a straight couple. I was really surprised that both of them, even the woman was like, oh my God, this is way too graphic. I was like, you know, but this is facilitating conversations for, you know, teenagers who might be curious. And in Florida with these book bans, it's like, they're not gonna see this in the library maybe. And if this is the only chance a kid has to see it is in my bookstore. Well, I was just talking about this earlier with some colleagues. I'm here at Denver Publishing Institute. It's like, if a librarian doesn't have to disclose to parents what a child has checked out at a circulation desk, then I'm not going to disclose to parents what kids have been peeking through at my store, as long as I don't think it's like, you know, extremely inappropriate. But if they're in the YA section, this is a book for them. And you know, it's generating conversations that I hope, at least in places outside of Florida, are easier to have. And I think that's really important. God, there's a bunch of things. Hold on. Oh my gosh. I'm not good at this. I'm so sorry. You were saying that no one checks on us.
What you're doing.
Yeah, you're saying no one checks on us. And I feel like I do have to say, I'm so thankful for the friends who have like listened to me vent through 8 years of like absolutely insane bonker stuff that's happened to me, especially like being a woman. I feel like when you're a woman and you own a business, I don't know why, but you attract so much more fallout in whatever happens. And I think the same for the Palestine stuff, because why should it be hotly debated that I have books by Palestinian, and I'm Jewish, and a lot of people are like, well, shouldn't you be pro-Israel? And I think there's this like inherent wanting to almost deliberately misunderstand people, and it's really hard because you're in this position where you don't want to, after what's happened to me, I don't want to attract more attention, but you do want to be clear about where you stand on things. And so I had my Palestinian lit right by the front door. I wanted people to know immediately, this is what I stand for. And, you know, if you're not here for it, you can leave. That's the front door is right there. But there's a lot of local businesses who've talked to me about getting, you know, threats online and people being like, why aren't you talking about this enough? Or, you know, how are you running a business when there would be days where people would not open their business or make sales out of like, I guess like reverence or observation for what's going on. And so I feel like there's always fallout for no matter what you do as a woman running a business. I don't know if this has been your experience, but I feel like everything I've ever done has been almost politicized. And one of the reasons I'm taking more of a step back from bookselling is because I would like the freedom for some of my opinions to just be not criticized. I would like the freedom to sometimes be a little dumb about my opinions. Maybe I have some wrong opinions and I shouldn't have to explain them anymore. But I feel like book people our stances on things, how we interact online, what we're doing in our stores is highly politicized when you're a woman, especially Latina, Asian, BIPOC, anything, Indigenous. Like, I feel like for some reason we are treated as tokens and spokespersons for our communities. And it is things with the ABA have been really frustrating for me. And this is something I was going to mention with the Palestine thing that I just remembered. The ABA wouldn't call for a ceasefire at Winter Institute. And I heard that there was only 5 Latinos at Winter Institute. And only 19 Black people out of hundreds of booksellers. And yeah, thank you so much for saying all of this, because this really resonates. I often feel alone because I run my store alone and don't know how to process these things with my friends who I was talking about because they don't run a bookstore. And so you can only explain so much. So thank you for all of that. Do you all run your store with a staff or do you run that by yourselves?
It's me.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's
Same.
it's a lot. Is it you too, Egypt? Yeah, I know. Joe, tell us about you. I was like,
Yeah, come on.
Joe just has a new store too, a beautiful new store.
Thank you. Yeah. So, well, I think that we got really lucky in the way that like we got our start because we basically moved in like as like a very small bookstore instead of a much larger space. And so because of that, I didn't have to, you know, like I kind of got to start with like training wheels on because I didn't have to learn like payroll and how to, you know, hire people and how do you build out a thing because I just took up this little space in the store. And that's been
I'm
really
modeling
great.
Now, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes so much sense for a lot of folks because, you know, obviously I don't have $200,000 sitting around or like whatever the crazy amount of money is. And so, you know, I started small and we've, you know, luckily like people have been responding to what we're doing and we've just, you know, when there's a new opportunity that comes up, like I take a look at it and see like, does this make sense for us? Is this going to help us reach more people than we're able to reach now or a different demographic than we're able to reach now. And so the two spaces that we have are, you know, inside of other businesses, which I think I was also like, we were talking about, you know, talking to other business owners and other friends, like other business owners in your community, especially BIPOC businesses, have been really phenomenal to work with because they get it. And we're trying to help each other, you know, succeed. And then this last opportunity, like, frankly, it was like, I was not looking to move into a new space, but because our first original space was closing and I was like, oh crap, we're going to have like, you know, like a permanent space. Like, what do I do now? And just by sheer luck, I stumbled upon this for rent sign and in this little space, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think, like Angela was, you know, I really love hearing Angela talk about how important her team has been, because I think like that is a big thing. Like, you know, for a long time, I mostly did things by myself, and I definitely have to mention that I got a lot of help from like my husband and family and friends that I would just drag along with me to pop-ups or whatever when you need extra labor or whatever. But, you know, having been here in Long Beach for, you know, a number of years now, like I've made friends with like lots of different people. And so I can rely on them to help, you know, staff our store when I'm out of town, or I did actually just close for a couple of days because I was like, it doesn't make sense to cover these days if we're not making that much money. And so I think just paying attention to that. But I think it's, you know, so much of this business and like whether you do well or not, I think is that community building and relationship building with your customers, with your fellow business owners, like the city, anybody else that can come across your path. Because you don't, you know, I mean, like I'm curious about like Egypt and all of the different amazing people that you've been able to work with. And I think, you know, I think a lot of that just comes like by luck and being able to say yes or trying things out.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of vulnerability to that. Egypt, could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. And to like kind of also, I guess, include my answer to your question about the role of our bookstore in this climate. And I think this is perfect because I can answer both questions simultaneously. I think that for one, I want to say I think that we're in very scary times. We are really seeing a lot of efforts being done to really keep people from the truth. And to me, I believe that bookstores, we are the alternative pathway for people to actually get access to truth. And that's really what it is. Of course, too, as a culture worker, I always say I stand on the front lines of cultivating and protecting Black culture, specifically as a Black woman, and also to make sure that other underserved communities have access to the store as well, because we stand in solidarity with each other because we're both fighting in this struggle. And I remember when I first opened the bookstore, I started a GoFundMe page, and I received such an immense amount of support. And I basically built out my store just from the donations that I received. But also, there was so much backlash. I had tons of media circulation and coverage with the store. And I just remember looking at these comments, and there were so many people saying that because I am a Black bookseller and because I say in my mission that I am a BIPOC bookseller, that I am a racist. And to me, it's so easy to get angry, but I think it's really important that we have and hold space so that we can start to reshape perspectives and really build community. And for me, I think that when we see these efforts being done to defund DEI and Africana studies and critical race theory bans and book bans, to me, I just feel more compelled to pour into myself and make sure that I am equipped to handle what is going on. And that is really to make sure that I'm open for one, because let's be real, opening and maintaining a bookstore is challenging. And for me, I'm in Flint. Flint is an economically deprived community. That's just really what the reality is. We are a blue collar community who was the home of General Motors, and we've seen the downfall of General Motors, and it has left neighborhoods in a very precarious state. And I think in my situation, it's because it is the one I'm in a book desert. Our city is considered a book desert. I am one of two booksellers, and trying to establish a literary hub alone and prove to publishers that, hey, we are viable, we are worthy of your authors coming over in our communities presents a whole unique challenge. And I think all of these things are intertwined. So when I'm thinking about like my team, it's me. I have a few part-time people, and I do have another team, a small team of people that do help me. I am a hybrid model, meaning I am an LLC and a nonprofit, because to be quite honest and transparent, the retail side of the business is not self-sustaining.
No.
Because Flint is just not in economically viable retail space right now. But also, I just seen so many trends. I was just speaking to somebody earlier about how many Black booksellers I'm seeing who are on the verge of closing their doors. And these are bookstores that are in like very, I guess you could say thriving communities, like in major cities. So it's not just me because I'm in Flint, Michigan, but I'm starting to see this pattern. I'm like, something has to give, because like I said before, we're in scary times. We are cultural institutions. We are institutions of learning, and we may be the only way people can get access to education, to truth, and to knowledge without censorship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to add some good news about Black booksellers in here that I actually found out today. I don't know if any of you know Catherine Morgan from Powell's. She signed the lease today for her romance bookstore, and this will be one of the only Black-owned romance bookstores in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe one of the very few in the US, honestly. So I do think that there's this like second generation who is recognizing our burnout after doing this, for me, more than 5 years of doing this 8. And they're like, no, we need to step in, because they're seeing these people step out too. And it is scary. Like I saw the numbers. I was talking to a friend who went to Winter Institute, and I was appalled to hear that only 5 Latino people showed up when this is not a regional, this is a national conference. How do you only have 5 between Florida, Texas, California?
Mm.
And maybe 5 isn't completely accurate. I don't know the stats on that, but it was small enough that it was of note. And that is extremely disheartening. So when I see these new booksellers with a lot more, I guess, motivation than me right now to go in and be in the trenches, I'm so inspired by that. And I think that running a bookstore through COVID has kind of like taken the light out of my eyes a little bit, because it's like every year should count as double after, I don't know, it was just so stressful. And I went through so many different formats, as Michelle was mentioning. And, you know, you have to be adaptable in order to live in this industry. And you're right that it's not self-sustaining at all. I mean, I'm in a ton of personal debt just because I wanted to keep a community space open. Like, the store pays its own bills, but I can't pay mine. And I think a lot of people take advantage or take for granted how these spaces we just have open, and you can just step in and you can feel safe and comforted and see all of these beautiful books by beautiful people that make people feel really affirmed. But people don't buy books all the time, or people don't support bookstores, and they're like, you know what, this is cheaper on Amazon. And it's Prime Day, so I feel like this is really timely. It's a prime day to shop with your local bookstore. If you're here, please support one of the award winners stores. Don't even worry about supporting mine. Please support them, and support Angela at Duende. Like, this is, I think this is so timely. I don't know if Michelle did this on purpose, where this fell on Prime Day, but it is hard because you want to see the support reflected back in your community, but sometimes it's your very own community being like, no, we're not doing this. And it's hard to deal with. So having conversations like this where people get it and you don't have to explain yourself or explain why a book is the price it is, or why, maybe you only have one copy on the shelf, why you don't have certain things in stock because maybe it was delayed at the publisher. It is such a relief to be with like-minded people with similar experiences, because I feel like there's these very niche small things that make our day hard. I don't know if this makes any sense.
I just had a pop-up the other day where someone came by, and I have these like beautiful origami like book earrings that a Boston, not local Cape, but a Boston artist, BIPOC artist makes, and poet. And the person was like, okay, I'd love these. And then the husband was like, well, you're going to bargain, right? You're going to bargain. And I was like, oh, and I usually it was just really funny because I was like, I was kind of stood my ground. I was like, well, I'm a tiny, small business. And I said, like, most of this is going to the artist, right? Like,
Yeah.
And it was just so funny because I was like, they're not thinking about it, right? Like, how can I save a couple bucks? Which I think everyone likes saving a couple bucks, but there's just this moment of like, I was like, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to state like, you don't need to bargain for this. This isn't something you need to bargain for. And one thing I wanted to add to the conversation about, Heather and Egypt, sort of that loneliness or that like kind of constant, I feel it all the time, but I also do so because it's just me and because it's such a small, it's me, I collaborate. Everything I do is a collaboration. Yeah. And so I think that's the only way I can continue doing. And that in itself is right. Like, collaborations are incredible, but they have their own, emotional labor and all the work that comes into collaboration. So I was going to kind of ask not to become, but about, the question of burnout, like how do you keep going? How do you, make sure that, how do we keep doing the work we're doing and making sure I always ask myself, is this the best way to be doing the work? And I'm constantly struggling with that question. I'd be curious what you guys think.
Yeah, so after running my store for so long, and I closed my brick and mortar the first week of May, there were certain circumstances that I knew it was no longer sustainable to run my store. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of taking the path of most resistance. And the most revolutionary thing would be for me to be doing well and for me to have a full cup so that I can continue to pour for other people. And I was very lucky. I applied for Denver Publishing Institute. I'm here now. It's like a month intense course on the publishing industry, which I feel like is still so mystifying to many people. Like, people don't know how books are made or how they're shipped, how bookstores work. People seem to understand retail, but not bookstores. And there's even people in my program who thought this might be a writer's workshop or, you know, something different, right? But being surrounded by people who get it is the most restorative thing that I've ever experienced. And the only other thing I can say is give people the opportunity to show up for you. Asking for help is extremely hard. I am the eldest daughter in a Latino household. I am the family manager. I understand it's hard. But when you don't ask for help, you actually sometimes isolate the people in your lives because you don't give them a chance to say yes. And you don't give them the chance to show up for you and love you and do the things that you might need, because you're a person with needs and it is okay and normal to have them. Everyone has them. And you're doing a service, and the people in your life, you deserve people in your life who deeply admire what you do and who want to help you in whatever way you can because they believe in your vision. And I think that I actually hosted a funeral for my store, and my old business partner, you know, he had stepped out maybe 2 years in because of mental health reasons. We're still very close. And I appreciate him so much. He hosted the whole thing for me, and he made these beautiful funeral programs that I later saw the ticket for how much they were, and I was a little mad, but it's like I let him show up for me. And it was the most I cried in public in a very long time. But so many people came. People drove from, I'm in Gainesville, Florida. People drove from Tallahassee, Orlando, South Florida, St. Pete. This is like 3 hours away, you know, cities far, because they were like, I spent so much time at your store and this meant so much to me. So my main piece of advice, and I'm going to ask Sharana and Egypt your advice as well, but it's let people show up for you, because part of the reason you're burnt out is because you think that all of this falls on your shoulders. And community means you also learn how to rely on other people too. It's not just you doing everything for other people and being a martyr. Community works both ways, and you need to give your community the opportunity to show up for you.
Absolutely. I would really honestly echo what you're saying. And this is something that I most recently had to do. I think too, as women, especially as a Black woman, I'm so used to always having to figure things out myself. And asking for help has so much stigma tied to it, because we've been conditioned to think that we have to do everything out on our own, even though, you know, there is no such thing really as doing everything on your own. Like I said before in my story, I received mentorship and guidance by my community members. So it's only natural to go back and to lean on the community that birthed me. I think, you know, as a mother as well, I prioritize myself, and I'm trying to just recondition that mentality and making sure that I am always at the forefront, because if I'm not well, my business is not well. And, you know, full transparency, like, this is something I'm still learning. I'm not an expert on. I was in a very challenging space recently that I'm just now getting out of, because I reached out to somebody. I said, you know, whatever you believe in, I just sent a text message like, hey, you know, you're a person I respect and I admire. Please keep me in your thoughts. I really need strength right now. That was the message that I sent. I sent it to another person too, and they've been checking in on me and checking up on making sure I'm okay. And that was the very first time I've ever did that in my life. And I felt like, you know, when other people are thinking about you, you kind of feel like the weight is lifted off. And
I agree.
Oftentimes, like what you said, like, I am a person who will isolate myself.
Me too.
And, you know, honestly, like, and I think we need to be really like transparent about this. Like, we're not just superheroes, you know, we are human beings and people. And that isolation comes definitely with the sacrifice, which is you are neglecting areas of your business, your relationships. And it's really important that, you give yourself grace and an opportunity to process what it is that you're going through. And I'm learning to do that. And I think it's really good that we're having this conversation because I'm still doing it. I'm still learning it. I just booked me like a cheap massage
Yes.
for Saturday.
Books are heavy.
They're
heavy. You need to get a massage.
They're so heavy.
I was like, you know what? No, I am going to spend this money and I am going to prioritize my overall wellness. I went to a doctor's appointment because I'm always keeping community, my family, my business all in the forefront of my life. And I'm always thinking about myself last. So I would tell every person, wherever you're doing, whatever industry you're in, make sure that you take care of yourself, your mental health, your overall wellness, and ask for help.
Absolutely. Something I told myself a lot when I was closing was, because you feel a tremendous amount of guilt when you feel like you're taking something away from your community. And it's like, well, you know what? I would be adding something if I were doing well, if I showed up as my best self, if I was taken care of. And something I told myself a lot was I gave all of my 20s to community. And I turned 30 in October, and I was like, it's time to give my 30s to myself. I gave an entire decade to community. I gave my childhood to my family, and it's time to put me first. And I was like, it's the Heather show now, and it's because it's hard to tell yourself like you deserve these things. And I come from a background where, my family, I'm a first generation American on my mom's side. And there's a lot of like, we didn't come from this place for you to be XYZ things. And there's a lot of expectations for what you have to be. Or as a woman, then there's like, you need to be successful, but not so successful you can't see family and you don't have time for your family, right? So yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge like you have bodily needs. Books are heavy. Please get a massage. And to normalize this for you, I got one every 6 weeks for the last few years because I'm stressed. I don't sleep well. And then you carry like 30-pound boxes, multiple a day. And it's important for you to feel well and feel good in your body. So get a massage, go to the doctor, but do those things and don't have that like, I shouldn't be doing this and I should be doing accounting. Like, because that's for me is like I will feel like I'll push myself to do the things that I know I have to do for myself, but I feel guilty the entire time.
Yeah.
I think that's so hard for us as women, as immigrants, as like for me, it's like I've always been a perfectionist, and so that has been like the biggest lesson of owning a small business is that it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to get done. And that's okay.
It's okay.
That's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah. And the thing that 9 times out of 10, nobody else is going to notice except for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Nobody's going to be like, that thing is, everyone's like, oh, this is fantastic. I love it. You're amazing. And so just trying to remember to listen to those voices and listen to the people who appreciate what you're doing in the community. I think it takes, a great deal of strength to be able to step back like you did, Heather, and say like, you know what, this is not serving me anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. I mean, that like, the sense, like for me, it would be like the sense of, failing my community and like, I did all this work for what, But I think at the end of the day, like you just said, like, this is not a business to get rich in. There are so many obstacles, especially for, women of color who own businesses. There's not the funding, there's not the support that there should be. And I think it just, you just have to listen to yourself and make sure like this is what you want to be doing. Because we could all be doing so many other things. So As long as it's serving you and serving your community, great. But if it's not, like, rethink things. Don't be afraid to try something else. Keep experimenting.
Yeah, and I felt like there was a lot more for me than sitting waiting behind a counter, hoping people come in. I felt like there was such a lack of diversity in publishing, that perhaps I could do something more on the inside and behind the curtain, and that whatever I might do might extend beyond my store hours, is how I felt. Because there's only so much you can do in the 8 hours you're behind the counter, but I would like to have more of a legacy, is how I felt. So absolutely. And I think something that you're saying is it's very like honoring your own boundaries for yourself. I had a lot of boundaries for my work and what I expected of myself when it came to showing up to work and how my work was done, what I did, who I did that with. But closing was a lot of honoring my own commitment to myself. And, people would be like, I guess it just didn't work out financially. And it's like, this was not for lack of financial success. I mean, no one is getting rich doing this, but I had the most sales I ever did last year, but it just wasn't enough. And that's okay. And I think that a lot of people don't understand how emotional bookselling is. And then I love that the theme of this is bookselling as cultural work, because it's cultural work, it's emotional work, and we are kind of in the trenches, dealing with really difficult things all the time. And I think that in bookselling, you really feel the tremors of things before they even happen, like socially, culturally. You have weird experiences, you have really great experiences. And I've cried from both at my store, but and running a shop by yourself or limited staff, it does feel like, who do I go to? And so I think that the cultural work, well, this is also cultural work, what we're doing right now. And us meeting each other, which I hope that we can keep in touch after this. It was a pleasure chatting with all of you. It can be hard, and it's a lot of like managing expectations and emotions and how you show up. So I want to thank all of you for being here and letting me be a part of this. This is a lot of the solidarity that I have been missing for a very long time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so much. This was such important community and conversation to be having about this work. It was really just to celebrate you and all that you do. I have to say, as a former bookseller, I was not an owner, I was a staff member. And so the emotional labor that went into a lot of things, and that it took out of me and a lot of colleagues, we could have used these kinds of conversations.
Yes.
That is for sure. And I will just say, I think we do need to learn how to take care of ourselves. And I think it is very difficult for staff and for our colleagues who are not owners to understand how to take care of themselves. And I think that, so I'm a recipient of this award, 2021. And I will say, when I got that award, it was at a really bad time as a bookseller.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of celebration, and I was like, trouble all the time for shit I'm saying and shit I'm doing. I don't know what to do with this.
Welcome. You gotta do what you gotta do. Sorry, in true Heather fashion, I have to say it.
But I think there was a lot of the conversation here about how to set our boundaries and take care of ourselves. And I just really thank you all for being here and taking this time, and for all that you do, and for sharing your evening with us, because we know how full your plates are. So thank you so much. And to everyone who is watching and joined us, thank you for being a part of this event. Please support bookstores and booksellers, not just this week, this unfortunate kind of week for certain things, but always. We've put their bookstores in the chat Belonging Books, Bel Canto Books, Comma Bookstore, and Social Hub. Please shop them online if you're not in the vicinity of their communities. Also, just really quickly want to remind you that our editor-writer mentorship program is open. So if you are a writer with a complete unpublished manuscript from an under-resourced community, you are welcome to apply. Applications close April 4th. The 2024 BIPOC Bookseller Award nominations are open. Anyone can nominate. You do not have to be in the industry to nominate. You can be a reader, a customer, it doesn't matter, and you are welcome to nominate your favorite BIPOC Bookseller Award. We also have a really important Margins Bookselling event happening on the 25th of July. It is a teach-in, a collaboration with I Stand With Immigrants about storytelling and solidarity. So I really hope you're able to join us for that. And then remember, our Margins Literary Conference is on sale now. Tickets are on sale online and in person. And don't worry, we offer scholarships if you cannot afford those tickets. And we do not ask for a trauma narrative. So we're safe on that front. Please, we build our programs collectively. So if there's something you would like to see, we do ask you to contact us. You can DM us on our socials or email us at info@thewordfordiversity.org. We also appreciate your support. All of our programs, minus our Margins Conference, is free of charge. Feel free to donate and support the organization. That is how we do this. We do it because of you. Thank you again for being with us tonight and for being in community. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day or night, depending on where you are, as far as time zone is concerned.
And congratulations to all of you again. Your work has been incredible, and you are the work you're doing is invaluable. You can't even put a value on that. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Yes.
Yes, please.